This is Linda Lang with Make It Now. I wanted to show you what we're going to do today. Now, this is going to take a few hours. It takes me about that long, and other people might take longer because I've been doing this for a while. But these are the items we're going to be making. As you'll see, we have these purses. This one, isn't that adorable? These are made out of children's jeans. This is an actual Levi. So it's also got a flap with a snap. This is optional because I've done some with and without it, so it's up to you on how much you want to put into it. I use a belt that I found at the thrift store, and you put it to the front, and I'll show you how to do that. If you open it, it's lined. And I use bias to trim the inside so there's no edging showing. And then I also put a zipper in with a pocket. This is the latest one I did. I used the handle strap from the belt so it matches. This is my first one I did. And if you'll see, it's on the really cute on the back too. But I didn't put a flap because I go, uh-oh, I forgot. Then I had sewn this in, which is a no-no. Do not try to sew these in. I'm going to show you how to do it so you're not, working your machine so hard. And then these are interesting. If you'll notice, this is a handle from a purse that I had. There was 2 handles on it, so I was able to make 2 jean purses because I only use one handle. And then it matches perfectly. Look at that. That's my first one I made. This one is also one I made, and it's a little different. I'm not going to do this one again. I actually put a hard piece in here that made it stand out a little bit. But people like the soft part, the soft part. So I really didn't care for this one, but I do like it. It has the white belt on the front and the white handle. So this one's cute. And also, it has the snap on the back. Inside, I have put, and I will do on each of my purses, I didn't do it on the last one, is I put a charm on the zipper so it makes it nice to get to. All right, so this is this one. And oh, isn't this adorable? This is my red belt with the handle. Has the snap on the back and has a pocket on the inside, just like the other ones. So if this is something you want to make, this is what we're going to do today. Okay, so now we're going to talk about our supplies. The first thing you want to do, of course, is get a pair of jeans. Maybe you've got kids that have outgrown their jeans. You can use those jeans. This is a size 6. This is also a size 6. This is a size 4. So you can use any size because you will adjust the size of it by using the edging around the purse that makes it full, okay? I'll explain that in a little while. So when you get a child's jean, though, there's something on the inside that you got to look at. This has a button. I guess it's for pulling in and cinching the clothes to the child. Well, you want to definitely get rid of this. Cut this off. Cut these off. All right. You want to cut the label out. You just want to get anything out of here that is going to make it a bulky purse. The other thing you want to do is on the back, you're only going to want to have one of these. Here's one here and here's one here. You're going to cut those off, but I'll show you as we go what we do. Here's another thing you want to look out for. If you're getting a pair of jeans, don't get ones with the little rivets. That cuts into your purse and it makes a smaller purse because you cannot sew over the rivets. Make sure you get rid of these or don't buy a jean with them, okay? There's a way to do it, and I'm just gonna tell you right now because as I cut the jean, I'm going to cut both sides down each side to have two front and a back. I'm going to cut on the inside of that, and it's going to make a smaller pocket. It's going to make a smaller purse. Okay, so we'll put this one aside and do that at another time. But what we're going to do is focus on the ones that we have here. Now I'm going to use this one for our display today, right? So to prepare this, you'll notice it has a button here. It's probably from the, yeah, see, it's this stretchy stuff for the kids. You want to cut that out. We're going to do that in a minute, but let me get to the rest of the supplies list. Would you believe you're going to need a hammer? Yeah, you need a hammer. We're going to use this if you want to put the clasp on your project. This is the clasp. If you want to put this on, you're going to need a hammer and you're going to need these little magnetic clasps. If you do not want to do that, you do not have to. Here's the supplies for that. I got this piece of plastic from my milk carton. I just washed it out and cut off both sides and have a couple of plastic pieces. And then you buy these little pieces. They are magnetic fronts and back. You get those on Amazon. They're not that expensive at all. I bought like 25 or 50 sets or whatever. It's going to last me forever. So that's this. And then you're going to make a strap, a piece of material from off of the jean part of one of your pants that you cut off, and you put it about 4 inches by 6 inch strip. This is what your strap is going to be, and I use this material to put the strap together, and I'll do that as well. The next thing you're going to need is a belt, any kind of belt. My first item, I went into my closet and got my own belt out and cut it up. I got these at the Goodwill, $1.99 or something like that. So we're going to use this, and then we're going to just cut it up and make it work for this one. Let's see, what else do we need in supplies? You need a sewing machine that sews through thickness. Yeah, unfortunately, that's something that has to happen. You've got to have a sewing machine that sews through thickness, because you're going to have 4 or 5 layers of leather or of denim, okay, and to sew through. And we do not sew through the belt. Now, I did it first and it broke 3 or 4 of my needles. You glue it now, so you have to get some glue. And I use what I used the Weld Bond. You can buy any kind of glue that glues leather, but I used this and it absolutely worked perfectly. And you're going to glue the edges down when you're done with the purse. You don't want to sew through leather. The only time you're going to sew through the leather, unfortunately, you have to, is on the sides. But there's other ways to do it. There's really other ways you can do this. But I do it this way because I have the ability to sew through leather. Okay, let's see if I have any. I have some notes here. Oh, you need a seam ripper because you're going to be using it to make your pocket. You have to have bias tape. Now, I make my own bias tape. I have a bias tape maker, but you can buy your own bias tape. It's only a few dollars. Buy black, blue, or brown to kind of match the inside of your lining. You might want to pick up some jean material. Any kind of material works. A little heavy-duty material, and I'll show you why. I have several pieces here. This one, it looks like a kind of a denim. It's an upholstery material, but it matches these stripes perfectly. So I used it for this whole area. See, this is what we're going to create using a different piece of material. You can be creative and have it different, or you can have it the same. I used a pair of my husband's jeans and made this, okay? Because it's not going to be enough on the little kids' pants on the legs So you're only going to have enough to make a strap, okay? You can't really use it for anything else, or a pocket, but you can't use it for this. So I had to sew this one together to connect it and make one strip. All right, I'll show you how to make those. All right, so you're going to need this little pattern. I know it's kind of a strange thing, but you can create it yourself. Once you have your purse done, you can do this last, because you can actually take your purse and make one yourself. If you're a seamstress, you know what I'm talking about. This is a half. This is half. I'm going to put this on the fold line. Put this on the fold line so that I make a nice full one, okay? So it's going to be a nice full one, and then this goes on a fold. So it's nice and long. If I have to sew it together, I do. But I'll show you how to do this when we get to that part. Again, this is not a beginner sewing project. This is an intermediate and advanced. It took me 4 purses to figure out how to make one, because I did some boo-boos and errors. You need an ironing board and an iron. Okay, I think that's all I need. Okay, you need scissors, of course. There's some things to remember. There's some things to remember that I didn't do at first, and this is going to be easier for you. Again, cut off all the rivets. If there's any rivets, please try to get jeans without rivets. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2 is to cut off all these little buttons and things off of this inside, the tabs, the labels, and all of these types of things. Okay, cut those all out. And as we go, I'll show you what else to cut out. So the first thing we're going to do, if you want to make a strap, that's what we're going to do first, just to prepare it, because while you're making the purse, you've got to incorporate this into your project before you finish the project. Otherwise, it won't be hidden. See inside? You don't see the inside. You do not see this on the inside, because it's done before you put the lining in. Okay? All right. So you need this set. Okay, this is one side. This is the other side. And then you need 2 of these little guys. Because the jean is pretty thick, you don't need to have a reinforcement. That's what this piece is for. But we're going to use it for the strap, because it is it's just a piece of material that you're using for the strap. So you need to have a little bit of reinforcement. And I'll show you how to do that right now. So you cut a piece of denim material, whatever you want to use. Oh yeah, you need an X-Acto knife. Of course, you know, these are, like, you can get them at the dollar store, 3 for $1.25 now. Okay, so you have this, and you want to kind of fold it in half to know where the center is. Okay, so I'm going to mark the center with a pin. So there's my center, okay? And now I'm going to know that on one side, I am just going to put one of my little clasps, and we're going to actually use, I'm going to put the smaller one, the thinner one, on the strap, and put the thicker one on the back of the pants. So we hold this aside, because we're going to do that later. So we're going to do this first. And this is where this little guy comes in handy. So I'm just going to make a little circle, just a little circle. Don't have to be fancy about it. And it's not even a real good circle. Okay. Let's go. Let's zoom in a little bit. All right. So I make this circle. I cut it out. And then on this side, okay, if you look at it, I'm looking at it at the camera. It doesn't matter which side, as long as you do it on one side or another, from the middle thing here. And you're gonna put it like this. It's gonna be like this when you're done. So how you do it is you take your this is a little pattern piece, by the way, and you put it where you want it on the right. Kind of eyeball it. Make sure you have enough space because you're going to sew here and you're going to sew here. Okay, and you're going to sew down the middle. So give it a little space. And then I mark it. Mark those little holes like that. So if you look at it, there's my little marks. Let me see if I can see it in the camera. There's a mark here and a mark here. If you use a black pen, you probably can see it. There you go. Now you can see it better. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my X-Acto knife and slice those 2 holes with my knife. Just a little bit. You don't need them big because this thing, these aren't real big, and that's what goes through. That's what goes through the holes, okay? So then you take this, it's so simple. You can actually go on YouTube probably to learn how to do it. But then you just take this and pop it in there like that. How simple is that? You turn it around. This is where this little guy comes into play. You also have to cut 2 little notches in this plastic. So I'm gonna use my pen and make those 2 marks from that piece of that little pattern piece. Use my X-Acto knife. I gotta see where I'm in the camera. And then I cut the 2 little slits, just like that. So now I have 2 slits. You take this, you put it on the back, poke it through those 2 slits. Like that. Then you take this little piece here. Now this is only for reinforcement if you need it. Otherwise you don't need to put this piece here. But I put it on the strap because it needs reinforcement. And then I put this piece here like that. This is where your trusty hammer comes into play. You hold this down and you simply kind of hammer inward and then down. Like that. Hammer inward. You can actually do it with pliers as well. I use a hammer. Like that. Don't hammer it too hard because you don't want to make it indent too much. So now we've got this. So front to back, I'm going to sew all the way around down here, across, and also down here. So I have seam work on both sides, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I have sewn it together all the way around, just like I told you I was going to do. I left the bottom open because you've got to turn it now. Now to make it easier for your corners, of course, you just cut the corners just a little bit, but not through the sewing. Now the fun part is trying to turn this, okay? So you can do however you need to turn it. It's going to be interesting. But you just push it through, and I will do that off camera. Okay, so I turned it inside out. It took me about 5 minutes because it was like pretty thick to do. Now, if you come up with an easier way to do that, go for it. So then I just use a pokey tool and I make sure my corners are out. My corners are out. And my inside is completely straight. And this is where your iron comes into play too. Okay, so then you want to just iron it flat and then use a top stitch and baste top stitch all the way around, and I'll be right back. Here's that completed strap. And I use the same color thread that goes all the way around. You can do white, you can do contrast, but I just make it the same. So then I take this piece with the backing on the other and I put it aside because we're going to work on that later. Again, that is a step you do not have to do if you do not want a strap. It's not required. Make this your purse. All right, so now let's prepare the jeans. This is the fun part. This is when we get our scissors out. So you just want to cut off the legs about 1 inch from the crotch so that you have room to play. Okay, you want to put these aside because you might want to use these for something else later. And now we have to cut the crotch. Just cut it across. It doesn't have to be fancy because you're going to get rid of that anyway, okay? Because what you want to do is you want to separate the front from the back. So on the side, you want to cut, you can cut on the back probably because there's a lot going on here, on the front here. So you want to cut the back. You want to cut it on the back line. So cut it as close to the seam as possible. All the way up. All the way through the belt, okay? Then you do the same thing on the other side. Gets a little thick in some parts. Okay. So now let's prepare the front. I'm gonna look on the back and go, oh, I see those little things here. I'm gonna get rid of those little guys here by simply cutting them off. And you use scissors to cut the button right off. And then just cut, oh, that comes right out. I didn't even have to do anything. Okay. And you don't have to worry about the inside of this at this point because it gets covered. All this stuff gets covered. So whatever's messy in here, the lining covers it. Now, if you'll notice, you have some pockets here. That's a good thing. I like to keep the pockets as long as I can, but let's take a look to see how far we have to cut on the bottom, and then it will decide if we have to cut up the pocket a little bit. On the side, you'll notice that I have a bit of a thickness. You want to cut out any thickness at all. So I am going to turn it around and I'll see it. You can see the thickness. I don't want this seam at all. Do not want the seam at all. I'm going to cut that out. You're going to also know that your pocket's going to get loose because you're going to cut the seam. So keep that in mind, and you can either pin it now or pin it afterwards. If I pin it now, then I know exactly where that pocket goes. Okay, so I just pin it at that point. But I don't want to use, cut through it. So let me go up there a little bit. All right. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to trim this side off. So I don't have any bulkiness at all. All the way up. I'm going to do both sides. Okay, so now I have no bulkiness on either side. And now I want to do something with this crotch because you can't have a crotch purse, right? It's got to be cut off. So you want to cut that whole crotch out, that whole thickness out. Get rid of that seam. All right. Okay, now this is what it looks like. Sometimes you want to leave the seam so that you can make it be like this, which I'm going to do with this. I'm going to do a little bit of this, but I don't need all this leg stuff, and you don't, because you want the purse to go as far as the end of that seam is. So I like to make sure I'm even on both sides, so I fold it over and I just cut off like that. So see, just like that. I have a little bit of a goobly gop here, right? So what you do is you want to trim and sew so this piece fits perfectly around. Okay, so what happens is that depending on which side I want to use, This is where your seam ripper comes in handy. I'm only gonna do it on, let's see, I'm going as I go. So I'm just gonna take a little bit out of the seam. Now I've done it differently. I've actually cut it, so I didn't do any seam work at all, but I'm gonna do seam work this time. All right. And then I only do one side. I don't have to do both sides. Just a little bit up, not too far. I'm just gonna do a little bit up. And you take this piece and you go over like that, so that it flattens the bottom and then there's no bulk at all. So you take this and you pull it over. You can actually cut the inside if you want to give it some space, some room, so that you can pull it over. And then you simply sew it around. Just hold it down and you sew it. Sew it down. Okay, I'll be right back. What I did was I seam ripped one side out. And then you simply pull it over to give it that curve. So let's sew it down. And I start somewhere about here in the middle, and I just sew it around. That's it, just one side. I don't do both sides. Now you have that kind of a curve at the bottom. Now what we have is this little pair of pants on the front, and you've got this needle here because when we cut the edges, it opened that up on the sides. Turn it over. And you'll notice that your pocket now has some holes on the side, which is fine because we're not quite ready to do anything yet. But you'll notice now the pocket is too long. So what I do is I simply cut the bottom of each pocket off. Doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be straight. And then I just sew right across on each side just to close up the pocket. I'll be right back. Okay, make sure that is connected at the top. Now I got to get rid of this little button here. So I just make sure you don't cut the material, okay? You want to make sure you just cut the, so I'll use a seam ripper. I don't want to cut my material. You get that out of there. And here's another one on this side. Nice clean front. That's what you want, nice clean front. You don't want to leave it square. So we're just going to curve the front. It's very forgiving. Just kind of eyeball it both sides. See, I just curved it a little bit. I still have this little bit of a crotchy thing going on. So I want to make sure that I cut that off. I'm going to go all the way to where I stop that seam. Okay, because you don't want this little crotchy place to be open. You want it to be completely closed. So this is going to be the front of my purse. We're going to cut more later because we want to bring it in as well on both sides, okay? So let's get that down. Now let's go to the back. Now the back has some things we got to get rid of. See here, this right here, we got to get rid of this bulkiness, this seam. So I'm going to cut it like this to get rid of that bulkiness. And it's okay if you cut in a little bit on the top. That's what we're going to do anyway. And then you do the same thing on the other side. I don't need to. It's already cut off. Okay. But you want to make sure that these are both the same on both sides. That the sizes are the same on both sides, okay? And we're going to do that in a minute. But we're going to do the same thing on the crotch and the back. The same thing we did on the front. This time I'm going to show you a simpler way to do it. All I do is the side where the seam is overlapping is the side I cut. So I'm going to show you something. I'm going to cut. You can use a seam ripper again if you want, but I cut as close to the seam as I can underneath that lip, just a little bit up, maybe an inch. And I take this piece and I just fold it over the top. like that. I might have to cut more because I need to fold it a little bit more. It's a little bit, because the back has a little bit more of an allowance. So see how I did this perfectly? It just goes right in here and right over the top. And I will pin it. See what I'm going to do? Now I'm just going to sew just across here, that one side, to make it nice and flat. I'll be right back. Now, because I have extra material here, I got to cut that off. So I'm just going to cut it. I'm going to eyeball it. You can fold it in half if you want, but I just cut it off because we're going to be doing some cutting anyway. Just cut that off. Make sure that we've got that going on. Now the back has this little piece. If you have anything left over, just cut it off. Cut off any strips. Now I'm going to cut this tag out. It just gives too much bulk. And then it has a button on the back. I'm going to cut that out too. Use a seam ripper. Get rid of that button. Like I said, get rid of anything that does not belong to the jeans. And that's your back. Now, we're going to do something quite interesting. You see these two things here? We got to get rid of those. We can't sew through those. So we're going to get rid of them using a seam ripper. Now I'm going to do this off the camera. All right, so I took the edges off. This one, I accidentally had a little hole. Sometimes you dig too deep and it makes a little hole. Don't worry about it. It's forgiving. I don't even worry about those things at all because we sew seams through it and you might not ever even see it. So now we take the back and we lay it. Actually, let's finish the front. You see how we have the pocket sides? You just need to sew those down, okay? Just sew those down on each side so that they're not loosey-goosey, and we can take the needles out. I'll be right back. Okay, so I sewed the sides so the pockets will be pockets. I made sure that they were high enough so they go into the seam on the bottom. I made sure this is together, and now I take the front and I lay it on top of the back. And now you'll notice something. The front and the back don't really connect really well. So you have to trim to make it fit perfectly. And what I do is I measure how much can I take off the front and how much can I take off the back. You want to make sure that it's centered. And you go to this like this. Okay, and now I can take a little bit off of this one because there's a lot more here. So this is the front, and I'm going to also want to make it go in so that it has a cute little inwardness to it. So I'm going to just do it like this. I'm just going to cut it. I don't get all fancy about it. I just cut it. And even if you cut into the pocket, that's quite all right. So this side, I might have to cut a little bit more off to make it even. So I fold it in half and I make sure it's even, and it is. So there's the front. Here's the back. I'm going to make sure we're good to go here. The front and the back matches, but the bottom doesn't. You'll notice I have a lot here. I'm going to cut that off. So I just want to make sure my tops are together. You can pin them if you want. I like to use these clips because it's a thicker piece. So I clip those on the top. Okay, and then I just make sure my connectors are here. I put that together, lay it flat, and then I just cut to the front of it. Even if I cut through back pocket, it's okay. I have several that have pockets cut into that are so cute. Okay. We have got our front and our back done in preparation of doing our lining. Okay. I really want this to be in more, so I'm going to cut this in more. If the front and the back aren't exact, that's okay because they do not connect together at all. The trim work between it connects them together. so you can have the back a little bit different than the front. If you notice, I've got a little bit of leeway on both sides of these. And I want to trim this in so that it makes that cute little inward dip, like that. Okay, I eyeball it, I make sure it looks pretty straight. I cut where I need to for the back. There. See how I cut into the pockets? It's okay. It's really cute anyway, because it's just really cute. You'll see when we're done. All right, so now that's the front and the back. We are ready now to complete the lining for both front and back. And we are going to start with the back, because we are going to put a pocket on the inside on the lining. And so this is where your extra material comes in handy, your denim piece or something big or flowery or whatever you want to use for your lining, and for the trim that goes all the way around that connects the front and the back, that gives you that space for your items to go in your purse. I'm going to use this piece of denim. You can use any color you want. You can cut up a pair of your old husband's pants, whatever it is. And then you would simply lay this on the piece of material. Find a place where it'll fit. Okay? This is the back. This is the piece where, let me trim this up a little bit more. I don't like that. I need it to have a little bit more of a inward. Okay. This is where you're going to be playing around a little bit more. This is when you're going to use your zipper. This is when you're going to add the pocket. Okay. I want to leave space all the way around. And I don't have a pattern. You use this as your pattern. You want to give it an inch up here. And you want to give it a little space, and you want to give it 2 inches down here. And I'll tell you why in a minute. So I'm just going to cut it out. I don't have to be exact. You see how I'm just cutting it out? But I am going to give myself some room down here. And up. So get that other big piece out of my way. Because you're going to put back to back when you sew. So this is the front, this is the front. This is completely different than we're used to, because we're not going to turn anything, all right? So now you put it down here. Okay, let's see. I'll put it this way for you. And then, okay, this is the fun part. You decide where you want your zipper in your back pocket. And I like it about this area where the seam is of the pants. So I turn this down where I want the zipper to be here. I put it on a grid. Like I said, this is advanced sewing. And I'm on number 9, both sides. I cut out number 9 all the way across. You can use a rolling blade, you can use scissors, but do the best you can to make it straight. So now you have 2 pieces. This is where you put your zipper. So now we take this to the front, both sides forward, like that. Where's my zipper? I'm going to use this zipper. Now this is a 9-inch zipper. I would prefer you getting a 5-inch zipper, because I'm going to have to cut this to 5 inches. I'm just going to cut it right there. Okay, so I'm just going to make it a 5-inch zipper, just like that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a nice 1-inch seam all the way across using a basting stitch, because this is where you're going to use the seam ripper to pull it out so that you can open up your zipper. So use a basting stitch all the way across at 1 inch. I'll be right back. So now what I have done is I sewed right sides to right side, a 1-inch seam, and I opened it and I ironed it flat. And this is where you're going to put your zipper. You're going to face the zipper down on the seam. You can use two-sided tape, you can use needles, you can just do it by holding it. It's up to you on your advanced sewing abilities. So I eyeball the zipper to be about the middle of this piece of material. Open that zipper up a little bit, and I moved my whole, I have a regular all-purpose foot, but I have the ability to go all the way over to the left with my needle so that it acts like a zipper foot. Then I sew down, and I just put back on regular stitch, not on basting, and I sew down until the zipper head. I lift up the foot, and then I go up, put that zipper right back on that seam again, and sew all the way out. When I get to the end of the zipper, I go, it has to be a polyester zipper because you can't sew through metal. And then you just sew across. And then back up. And then make sure that zipper, you kind of push it down just a little bit so that you can get up inside there, and then sew it down so that you hold the whole zipper together. It's very forgiving because it's on the inside and the lining. Okay, so this is what it looks like now. Let's get that piece of material on this. Cut off any threads. Look how nice that is. It's nice and straight. And then you take your seam ripper and open it up. Like that. There's my zipper head. Okay. Now you got to make the pocket because that's just the zipper. So then you take a piece of material the same color as this lining. You turn the piece over. So what I did was I took the same material and I cut a pocket. You place it face down on top of the back. The front goes to the back. Make sure that the zipper is completely covered on the top. You can pin it if you like. And then do not sew through the zipper at all. Make sure you're on the one side, your zipper is in the middle somewhere, and then you can sew down here. Let me show you. And you go and you sew all the way around the complete square. And I'm going to go across the top. Right. That's how you make the back. You see, now I use the same material, the thread as the material, so you can't even see where I've sewn the pocket in. Let's go back over to my workstation. Now we are ready to assemble the back. And what you do is if you decide to put on the snap, this is when you do it, before you sew the front to the back. And I like to always put it underneath the center loop. And we're going to put it right here like that. You do not need plastic because you've got this nice thick seam. And it acts as my guide as well. And I'll take my X-Acto knife, and on either side of this, I'll put a little slit and a little slit. Okay? It's a teeny tiny hole. And you then stick this in both holes. Like that. Turn it over. Put this little piece on it like that. And then you can use your pliers. You can put, I think you can actually use your fingers. Yeah, you can actually use your fingers, but I used hammer. This is where you don't really pound hard, just a little bit, just to make sure those are connected. And now I have my snap on there. Okay, that's what you need to do on the back before the lining together. Wrong sides together. Measure it. I want the zipper to be at both sides of the seam so that's nice and straight on the inside. Then I pin it. I'm going to cut it to the pants. But I'm going to leave this inch up here because this is going to be my seam, my facing binding. So you want to make sure you have enough up here because you're going to fold it in and connect it this way. So you're going to fold it in like that. Okay, so I'm going to cut out all the way to the edge. All the way around, but not the top. The top stays 1 inch. This is also where you can shape it. If you think, oh, I don't like that much jean, I want to make more of a curve. This is when you do all of that. But you make sure both sides are even. Okay. And this is when you take this here and fold it in like this. Becomes your facing. Pin it down and sew it across. So I'm going to pin it. I like to do it from the front so I can see what I'm doing. I'm going to pin it down. I'm going to pin that down. You can iron it as well, make it nice and flat, and then sew it all the way across, top stitch. I'll be right back. Okay, I sewed it all the way across the top. And now to finish this off, you just sew it all the way around the edge so that it becomes one piece. You'll notice now your pocket, isn't this cool? It opens and you've got a pocket on the inside. So now we just sew it all the way around, top stitch. Okay, so what I did was I sewed all the way around the edge as close to it as possible. All the way, as close as I could, all the way around the edge. The back is now finished. We can put that aside. Now that we have finished the back, now we work on the front. And so the same thing that we're going to do that we did on the back, we do on the front. So we take a piece of our cloth that we want to use for our lining, and you put the lining wrong side up and wrong side of the front to the top of that. And you also want to leave an inch across this top. Okay, let's go there. Okay, so I'm going to do a little differently on this one. I don't have to cut way down here because I'm not putting a zipper in on this side. So I'm going to generously cut around it just to get the other piece out of the way. Okay, so now I can work on this. See how it's more of a curve this way? So you want to make sure that you cut this kind of a curve about an inch bigger than this, because you're going to use that as the lining like we did on the back. So again, to make it perfectly the same, you want to pin this down. Just pin this down. The pounding, if you hear it in the background, is people working on my deck. Okay, so I'm just going to cut out the exact shape of this front, but I'm going to leave an inch at the top. Okay, just like that. And then I cut and curve this. It's just like that. A little bit on the top like this. And then you trim it edges so that it'll fold. So you just cut a little bit of an easement just around the edge of that top so that it folds in nicely. Then you fold this in like this. Let me see, like this. And make sure it goes all along the top, perfectly aligned to this. Once I pin it and I sew it straight across the top, I continue sewing all the way around, just like that. Now it's ready for the front and the back to be assembled. It's gonna go like this. Make sure that my front and the back look pretty good. Front and the back look good on top of each other. They don't have to be exact because again, we're not sewing these together. We're sewing an input, whatever it's called. I don't know what it's called. A piece, a casing or something in the between. Oh my goodness, I forgot something. Okay, let me back up a minute. Before you sew, okay, before you sew the top together, you need to make sure you put your flap in it. Okay, I messed up. So I'm just gonna, thank you for being with me as I make a mistake. I do make mistakes from time to time. I'll be the first to admit. So I'm just going to open this up, make enough room just to fit this in. And you're gonna wanna turn it this way, the button side down, because that goes to the back, okay, of that purse. So then you stick this inside here. I'd say about 1, 2, 3 inches, 3¼ inches from the top of this to the top of the back, top of the front to the top of the back, okay? Well, that works good, doesn't it? It's on there good. Okay. So now I'm gonna go take it to my machine and sew it across and make sure that this tab is in there as well. I'll be right back. I'm gonna put these two together like this. See how pretty that's gonna look? Just like this. That snaps to there. Okay. Here's the fun part. Once you, now we're pretty, you know what? You're almost done. This is like 3/4 of the way done with your purse. I'm gonna use the same material that I use for my lining. This on the fold, and there's the fold as well, because I folded it over. And then I'm just gonna, you can pin it or you can cut it. I'm just gonna cut it like this. If you need help with this part, just give me a holler and I'll send you a copy of this pattern. Okay, so now, see, that's what it looks like, open. It's got a little bit of a taper at the top, tapering on both sides, wider in the middle. And then how do I know it fits? Well, you take your little front or back, you go to the center, and then you just kind of hold it and you roll it to see if it fits. Okay, oh yeah, it goes all the way up to the top. It needs to go an inch over the top, like that. But I need to make 2 of these. I need to make 2 of these, okay? So now I've got that already done. So I'm just going to use this material and just lay it down and use it as my pattern. Okay. All right, and then I'll do the rest. The other side, because you want to make 2 of these bottoms. You can make it as wide or as narrow as you like. Now, my pattern isn't all that great because I noticed that this is more tapered than this. You'll see it's like this is more straight. So I'm going to fold it over. You see the difference already? I can see the difference. Look, I'm gonna cut this off. because I want it to be tapered and I want it to be centered. Give yourself at least a good 1.5 inches on each side. This is what I'm talking about. This right here. You make sure you have enough here, because that's where you're going to put your handle. Okay. You can go wide if you want, or you can go narrow, but I'm going to just cut here, and okay, the middle is fine. Then I go over here. It's pretty close. It does not have to be exactly perfect, but close is really fine. This is very forgiving. Okay. Open it up. And you put you put wrong sides together. Put wrong sides together. And you sew about 1.5 inches to the end. Okay, now see, this has got so I'm going to cut this off because it needs to be exact on both sides. On both sides, okay. So when I sew, I'm going to sew this here and I'm going to sew this here. But you're not going to sew all the way to the end. You're going to leave 1 inch open because you need to be able to use this to fold in and make your casing on side of your purse like this. It's going to be like this on the edge when we're done. So I am going to go ahead and sew, and I'll be right back. Okay, so what I did was I sewed it all the way around the edging, and then I also pressed it. This is my center, and I also folded it this way to make sure everything lines up, and I actually had to cut a little off to make it match perfectly at the top. Okay, you don't want the openings on each side to be different sizes. Okay, now here is the extreme fun part. This is the funnest part of all. Well, really, I'm just being sarcastic because this is the hardest part of all. It's not hard, it's just tedious. You got to work at it. So you want to make sure you're in the middle, and you want to put the front face down, and you're going to sew. You can pin it as well. You're going to sew all the way around, and you're going to inch this around and inch it around until it goes all the way to the top. Now we're going to sew the front with the tab to the facing or the lining that goes around and connects both the front and the back. So you want to make sure that you've got this positioned in the center of this piece. So let me see. I got it kind of like in the camera here. So here's this long piece that goes in the middle, and you make sure that this piece has this little guy right in the middle so that both sides are even on both sides. And I always like to start sewing from the middle of the bottom, not from the side around, but from the middle of the bottom, because I'll show you why. Because we're going to do something different at the top. So you sew front, right side to right side of your lining of the bottom. And now I'm just going to start sewing from the bottom. And what I'm going to do is when I get to a corner, I'm going to have to ease around. And if you need to clip to make it easier, then so be it. And so as close to the edge as you can, because later on we're going to be using seam binding to connect, to complete the edge. So then you just kind of go slowly around and curve and to the top. Okay, so now we're here at the edge. See how we have a little bit going out on both sides? And now what you do is before you finish sewing, you tuck these both inside, both front and back inside, like that. You don't want to do it before because you don't know how much material you need, and then you continue sewing up. So now what you've done is you've connected this piece to the front. You see how nice that is? Now we're going to go the other side and go up. And of course I'll have to turn it this way. Okay, so now I'm about an inch here, and I don't want to sew yet all the way until I tuck this in like this, all the way to the edge, all the way to the edge of the pants top. And the same thing on this. I make it exactly the same, because you're going to want to sew the handle in here, and you want both front and back to be even. So then I just sew up on the side. So it's all this thickness together. All right. This is what we've got so far. The front of the front of the jean goes to the front of this piece. I don't even know what it's called. I don't know what it's called. Maybe you can tell me what this is called. I don't know. And so then we make sure that it's going to be in the center. So then I do right sides to right side to my facing, and do the same thing on this side. We are almost done, people. You know, you can make this in 3 hours. That's why I like make it now, because we are making it now. So what you want to do though before you start sewing is you can probably pin it, and then you make sure that it's going to fit. So you kind of wrap this around and see, oh yes, it's going to go. Oh, and it's going to go, see, it's perfect. It's going to go perfect to this edge. So I'm going to start in the middle and go up one side, just like I did the front. You want to make sure that this part right here matches the top of this. So you want to tuck it in a little bit on both sides. Okay, so I did it all the way up to this side. See how that has a center, both front and back? And also up the other side. I can take this needle out. I want to make sure that these pieces are together and that matches the top of this. Do quality control, double check that everything is together at the top and at the top here. Looks like I need to do looks like this came out. So I need to pop this back in and sew it back down. It looks like I missed the top there. So I need to sew it in. There. Okay. Little quality control. Make sure that this is together there. This is together. This is together there. And this is together. Now this is what we have so far. And you'll notice that this is pretty raw. This is where you use your bias tape, and it's the double wide bias tape, because you're gonna put the bias tape all the way around and sew it. This is how you make your bias tape. You gotta have a bias tape little piece here. You can get these on Amazon. You can buy a whole kit for like, I don't know, $18, and they come in different sizes. This is the one for the bias that goes around the purse. It gives it enough space. These are actually quilting bias makers. So anyway, what you do is you find a nice cloth, just a real cottony cloth material. And I chose the black because it matches the inside better. And then I fold it up a little bit like this. And so now what you do is you measure 1.5 inches. Use your ruler and a rotary tool. And you're going to need 2 of these because you've got 2 sides to do. Now you're asking me, how long do you make it? Well, depends on around how much you need to put around it. So you can actually take a tape measure and measure around the whole edge of one side, and then you know how many inches. But I normally just take a piece. It probably works as I just take a piece, I fold it in, you know, 4 times, and then I just cut through it and I make a nice long strip. So that's all you want to do. And now I put a point on one end. And now we're going to go over to the ironing board. You got the iron nice and hot. You take the end of this and you pop it through the bigger part of this piece of this tool. And you grab this little piece that's on the top here and you push it through. And now I have the bias is starting to form. See, now I'm going to iron it. You can actually use a pin to pin the end down like that onto your ironing board, and then pull and just iron. And it makes the bias. Okay, so now we have turned it right side out. This is the front and this is the back. What you do is you take your belt, and unfortunately I wasn't recording when I showed this part, but you take your belt, because it's this long belt like this, and you hold it to the front of the pants and you cut it exactly to the side. You're not sewing this into the purse. You're going to glue it down. So you hold it there and then you go on this side and you cut it to here. Okay? And then you set this aside. Then you take the rest of your belt and to the size that you want, and you pop it in right side up. Make sure that the handle of the strap is right side up, and you put it in there and you sew it across. This is why you need a heavy-duty sewing machine, to sew through leather and denim. And I'll be right back. Okay, so what I did was I sewed across, cut off any threads, I sewed across. Okay, so I've got the handle done. Now I'm going to finish my belt here. This actually makes the purse, and we're just about done. Okay, so you want to take this apart and put this through the loop of the pants, and then you want to do the same thing. Put this through the loop of the pants and then buckle it. Now you buckle it. Okay. So then you glue this side down and you use clamps. So it's real important to have nice little clamps as well. I'm going to use this weld bond, and I can't use this top. It doesn't work for me. So I know that it's in there, so I'm just going to stick a stick in here and squish it around. I think it's going to stick on the stick. You see how it sticks on the stick like this? Then I put a little on this side of the back side of the belt, just right on the edge where I'm going to stick it to the material. You can go a little bit up, maybe 1/2 inch, and cover all that. Okay, and then place it right there against that seam and clamp it. You got to let it dry 24 hours. Don't even think about it. Don't even look at it. 24 hours. And now we put the other side on. And then put it right to the edge. Try not to let some of the white seep out. If it does, just wipe it off and use a clamp. I will show you how it looks. But right now, since you can see how beautiful it is, and the back has a snap, the inside has a pocket. And what I do on the inside, so now what I do is I add a little charm to the zipper. You can use a zipper pull, you can use something off of a jacket. And what I do is I have some jump rings and I add it to it, and then I add a gem off of it. Makes it really simple. So let me show you this one. If I open it up, I've got a pull ring with a gem on it. Well, that's it. Make it now with Linda Lang.